The Intergalactic Festival was one of the grandest events of the year, hosted on a vibrant, neon-lit planet known for its diverse inhabitants and a mix of cultures. Humans, alien species of all kinds, and intergalactic travelers gathered from across the galaxy to celebrate peace, unity, and the wonders of the universe. Music echoed through the grand halls, and the aroma of strange yet delicious foods filled the air. Dancers from various worlds spun and twirled, their movements as alien as the stars themselves. For Daniel Hayes, an experienced human explorer, the festival was just another stop in his long journey through the galaxy. He had attended countless events like this one, observing the vast cultures and customs of the universe. He wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. This time, however, something would be different. The tall human stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, observing the alien festivities. His outfit was simple, a dark tunic and boots that suited his nomadic lifestyle. As the music pulsed through the hall, his feet tapped to the rhythm. Dancing was never his forte, but he admired the grace and elegance of others on the floor. The swirling lights, a mix of electric blues and vibrant reds, created a mesmerizing atmosphere. Then his eyes caught her. She stood near the edge of the dance floor, her presence commanding attention without a single word. Tall, elegant, and with a beauty that seemed almost otherworldly. She had an aura that set her apart from everyone else. Her skin shimmered with a soft, iridescent glow, like the surface of a pearl in the dim light. Her eyes, dark and mysterious, held a glint of wisdom that seemed as old as the stars themselves. Daniel didn't know why, but he was drawn to her. It wasn't just her appearance. It was something else, something deeper. He had met countless beings across the galaxy, but none of them had ever made him feel this way. She seemed to notice his gaze and, with a small smile, walked toward him, her steps graceful and deliberate. The closer she got, the more her presence overwhelmed him. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something in the way she moved, fluid, confident, yet with an air of mystery. When she reached him, she didn't speak at first, simply observing him with those dark eyes. "Would you care to dance?" she asked, her voice calm yet strong, carrying an unspoken command. Daniel was taken aback. He hadn't come to the festival expecting anything beyond the usual, but here was this stranger, this mysterious woman, asking him to dance. He wasn't sure what compelled him to say yes. Maybe it was the intrigue in her eyes or the way she seemed to shine in the light. Either way, before he could fully gather his thoughts, he was already moving with her onto the dance floor. The music swirled around them, and they began to dance. The alien rhythm was unlike anything Daniel had ever heard, but somehow it felt natural. The woman led with an effortless grace, her movements precise yet fluid, as if she had been dancing for centuries. Daniel followed her lead, his awkwardness quickly fading as they fell into step with each other. Their feet glided across the floor, and Daniel found himself caught in the moment. It wasn't just the dance, it was the connection, the way their bodies moved together, as if they had been doing this for years. The crowd around them seemed to fade away, the flashing lights blurring into a soft haze. For a brief moment, there was only the music, the movement, and her presence. She spoke in a language that Daniel couldn't understand, yet her tone was calm and inviting. He felt no fear, only a deep sense of peace, as though they were the only two people in the universe. Her hand on his felt firm but gentle, guiding him through the intricate steps of the dance. He marveled at how easily she navigated through the crowd, as if she were floating rather than walking. There was power in her grace, an undeniable strength behind every movement, yet it was controlled and fluid. Daniel's heart raced, not from exertion but from the realization that he didn't want this moment to end. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew him in like a star pulling a planet into orbit. He tried to focus on her face, but it was hard to pin her down. There was something elusive about her, like trying to capture the wind in his hands. She was from another world, he knew that much. but there was more to her than just her alien nature. As they danced, he felt as if she was sharing some hidden part of herself, a side that few ever got to see. Her movement spoke of untold stories, of battles fought, of wisdom gained through years of experience, but it was all veiled behind the elegance of her dance. At some point, Daniel realized that he had forgotten everything around him. The music, the people, the very setting of the festival. All of it had faded into the background. There was only her, only the rhythm of their steps. Eventually the dance slowed, and they came to a gentle halt. The music continued, but Daniel felt an unexpected emptiness as they stopped moving. The crowd resumed its normal rhythm, and the spell that had held him seemed to break. He looked at her, unsure of what to say. She smiled at him, but it wasn't just a simple smile. It was one filled with gratitude, mystery, and a hint of something else. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft yet rich with meaning. "It's rare to find someone who dances so freely." Daniel blinked, unsure of what she meant. "It was nothing," he replied, still caught in the haze of their shared moment. She nodded but didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a step back, her eyes never leaving his. "I must go now," she said, her voice carrying an air of finality. Before Daniel could say another word, she turned and disappeared into the crowd, vanishing as swiftly as she had appeared. For a moment he stood there, staring at the space she had just occupied, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His heart was still racing, and his mind was reeling. Who was she? What had just occurred between them? And why did it feel so important? He wandered through the festival for the rest of the night, trying to shake the feeling that something monumental had just happened, but he couldn't. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't forget her. Her dance, her eyes, her presence. It was as though he had been touched by something beyond the ordinary, something that defied explanation. The night passed without another sign of the mysterious woman. Daniel eventually left the festival grounds, his thoughts consumed by her, and though he didn't know it yet, this random dance with a stranger would set the stage for something far greater than he could ever have imagined. The next day he would learn the truth about the woman, about who she really was, and his life would never be the same again. The following morning, Daniel woke up in his small rented quarters, the events of the night before still swirling in his mind. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the memory of the mysterious woman he had danced with. Her face, her grace, and the feeling of connection he had experienced haunted him like a dream he couldn't quite recall. It wasn't like any other encounter he had had during his years of exploration across the galaxy. Something about her, something deeper than just her beauty, pulled at him. He couldn't help but feel that he had somehow missed something important. There had been a moment, right before she had left, when their eyes locked. A brief moment, yet it felt like an eternity. The unspoken words between them were more than just fleeting glances. What did she mean when she said it was rare to find someone who danced so freely? It was as if she was speaking to something within him that he hadn't even fully understood himself. Daniel got up, walked to the window, and looked out. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting an orange glow over the bustling city below. The streets were already filled with people, both human and alien, all going about their business. The festival from the night before seemed so distant now, like it belonged to a different world, a different time. Yet the feeling of the dance, the connection with that woman, lingered. After a quick breakfast, Daniel made his way to the festival grounds. He didn't have any clear reason for returning. He just needed to understand, needed to know if there was more to that night than a fleeting moment of enchantment. As he walked through the now quiet streets, his mind was occupied with thoughts of her. But there was something else tugging at him. Whispers in the wind, the faintest of murmurs. As he approached the grand hall where the festivities had taken place, he saw groups of beings standing in clusters, speaking in low tones. He felt a shift in the air, an unusual tension that hadn't been there the night before. The cheerful atmosphere of the festival seemed to have faded. People whispered in hushed voices, exchanging worried looks. Daniel tried to overhear but couldn't make out anything coherent. Then, as if guided by instinct, he felt the pull of something familiar. Turning a corner, he spotted a familiar figure near a small fountain in the courtyard, a figure he hadn't expected to see again. It was her. She was standing there, seemingly lost in thought, her back turned to him. Her features were softer in the daylight, yet still strikingly otherworldly. She wore a simple cloak that blended in with the other festival-goers, but even so, she stood out. There was an elegance to her movements, even in the way she held herself. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the confidence and calmness that radiated from her. She looked like someone who had lived many lifetimes and seen countless things, yet carried the weight of it all with grace. Daniel's heart raced, but this time he was prepared. He didn't want to make the same mistake he had last night, standing still and saying nothing. He had to know who she was, what she was. What had he missed? He approached slowly, his footsteps quiet against the cobblestone. She didn't seem to notice him until he was only a few feet away. She turned, her gaze locking onto his instantly, as if she had been expecting him. "You?" she said, her voice soft but unmistakable. It was the same voice, the same calm yet powerful tone he remembered. "I was wondering when you would return." Daniel stopped in his tracks, feeling a rush of confusion mixed with relief. "I didn't know if I would see you again," he said, his voice low. "You disappeared so quickly last night." Her lips curved into a small smile, but there was a hint of something deeper behind her eyes. "I had to," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "The dance we shared, it was unexpected, but not without purpose." Daniel frowned. He had no idea what she meant. "Purpose?" "Yes," she said, as though she were deciding whether to trust him with a secret. "But perhaps it's time you understand more than just the dance." She looked around, as if checking for anyone nearby, then lowered her voice. "You have been drawn into something much larger than you think." "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, a group of heavily armored guards appeared at the far end of the courtyard, their eyes scanning the crowd. The woman tensed, her expression shifting to something more serious. "Come with me," she said urgently, grabbing his wrist and pulling him toward a side entrance. Daniel, taken by surprise, didn't hesitate. His mind was racing. What was going on? Why was she so tense? They quickly slipped into a narrow hallway, moving swiftly through the maze-like corridors behind the festival grounds. The walls were cold, made of dark stone, and the air felt heavier here, as if the building itself was holding secrets. "Who are they?" Daniel asked as they turned another corner, glancing back at the guards. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led him into a small, dimly lit room, its door clicking shut behind them. Inside, the room was sparsely furnished with a few chairs and tables, but what caught Daniel's attention was the holographic map displayed in the center. It showed not just the planet they were on, but the surrounding systems, planets, ships, and stations marked in bright red and green. "Listen carefully," she said, her tone more urgent now. "I've been watching you. Not because of our dance, but because of who you are."
"I am." "Yes," she said, moving closer to the holographic map. "You're not just a simple explorer."
"You have a role to play in what's coming. The galaxy is on the brink of a great change, and I need your help."
Daniel was taken aback. "I'm just an explorer."
"I don't get involved in politics or anything like that." She shook her head. "This is bigger than politics. There are those in my empire who seek to take control. There are factions who want to see the galaxy torn apart. They don't care for peace. They want power. And they will stop at nothing to get it." Daniel's heart began to pound in his chest. "What does that have to do with me?" She met his gaze. Her eyes filled with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "You danced with me last night, Daniel. That wasn't just a random meeting. You are more than just a witness to this conflict.
You're part of it now. You're part of it, my life.
My fight. Before he could process what she said, the door to the room burst open, and the guards from earlier stormed in, their weapons drawn. The woman stepped in front of Daniel, her hand raised, and immediately the guards froze, their eyes wide with fear. "Leave us," she commanded, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension in the air. Now, for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. The guards exchanged nervous glances before reluctantly lowering their weapons and stepping back. Without another word, they left, the door slamming shut behind them. The woman turned to Daniel, her expression softening slightly. "You see now. I cannot protect you forever, but I must ask you for your help. Will you stand with me?" Daniel stood there, his mind spinning. This wasn't just some chance encounter anymore. He was in the middle of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. And the woman who had once been a mysterious stranger was now looking at him, waiting for an answer. He took a deep breath, his heart still racing. "What do you need me to do?" She smiled, a hint of relief in her eyes. "First, you must understand that everything you thought you knew is about to change." Daniel stood still, his thoughts racing. The woman who had led him into this hidden room was a queen. Not just any queen, but a ruler of a powerful empire, and he had no idea what that truly meant for him. His whole life had been about exploration, observing distant worlds and gathering knowledge, never involving himself in the politics or struggles of those he met. But now, it seemed, fate had drawn him into something far greater than his understanding. The woman, her name still unknown to him, was calm and composed as she studied him. She had just revealed that he was part of a much bigger picture, part of something that could change the course of the galaxy. He had danced with her last night, unaware of her identity, but now he realized that their meeting was no coincidence. "Why me?" Daniel asked, his voice still full of disbelief. "I'm just a traveler." "I'm no soldier. I don't know anything about political conflicts." She stood by the holographic map, her gaze fixed on the distant stars that flickered in the projections. "I didn't choose you because of your military skill," she said softly. "I chose you because of your heart, your ability to see things clearly, even when everyone else is caught up in their own ambitions." Her words hung in the air, but Daniel couldn't fully grasp their meaning. He was just a man who had wandered from planet to planet, experiencing life from the sidelines, never getting involved in anything too dangerous. Now standing in this room with a queen, he wondered how he had become a part of her world. "What do you mean?" Daniel pressed. "What's happening? Why are people after you, and why am I a part of it?" She turned to face him, her eyes intense, yet not unkind. "There is a power struggle within my empire. A rogue faction seeks to take control. They have been growing in power for years, and now they've set their sights on overthrowing me. They want to conquer, expand their influence, and destroy the peace I've fought so hard to maintain." She walked toward the center of the room where a table stood, covered with datapads and various tools. She ran her fingers over one of the devices, activating a small hologram that displayed images of several individuals, their faces obscured by shadow. "They are the ones who seek to tear everything apart," she continued. "They do not care about the well-being of others. They only care about power." Daniel watched as the images of the figures on the screen flickered. Some looked like ordinary citizens, while others appeared to be military officers, standing tall and proud. The shadows on their faces made them seem sinister, but it was the expression in their eyes, full of ambition and greed, that unsettled him. "And you think I can help stop them?" he asked, his voice skeptical. "What could I possibly do?" "I don't even know who they are or what they want." She looked at him, her expression softening. "You can do more than you think. You are a person who understands the value of life, of people. You see beyond the surface." That is what makes you different. Daniel shook his head, still trying to process everything she was saying. But I'm not a fighter. I can't go up against an entire faction. I'm just an explorer. The woman approached him slowly, her presence as commanding as ever, but with a gentleness that eased his fear. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. You are more than just an explorer, she said quietly. You have a unique ability to unite people. You have been traveling among many different species, seeing how they live, how they think. You know what it means to coexist. That is the power you have, Daniel. The ability to bring people together. Daniel's mind was spinning. He didn't know what to make of her words. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't some hero. He was just someone who had seen a lot of the galaxy, learned a little here and there, but nothing that felt like it could prepare him for what she was asking. And yet, something inside him stirred. It was a feeling he couldn't ignore, the same pull that had drawn him to her in the first place. I don't know if I can do what you want me to, Daniel said quietly, but I'll help however I can. The woman nodded, her face unreadable. That is all I ask. Your help doesn't need to be grand. It needs to be genuine. Just then, a soft chime echoed from the corner of the room, and a small device on the table blinked. The woman turned toward it quickly, her expression hardening. She walked over and activated the device, revealing a new set of holographic images, this time of a dark, looming ship that hovered just outside the planet's orbit.
It's them, she muttered under her breath.
They've arrived. The realization hit Daniel like a cold wave. The rogue faction was here, right above the very planet they stood on. It was no longer just a distant threat. It was real, immediate, and it was now. The woman turned to him, her voice firm. I need you to help me now, Daniel. We have no time to waste. She grabbed a device from the table and handed it to him. It was small and compact, looking like a basic communicator but with a much more advanced design. This will allow us to communicate securely without being intercepted. Keep it with you at all times. I'll be in contact. Daniel took the device, still trying to catch up with everything that was happening. His thoughts were jumbled, but his instincts were telling him that this wasn't just some random event. He was part of something much bigger now, something that could shape the future of the galaxy. I'll do what I can, Daniel said, trying to muster some sense of confidence. Thank you, the woman replied. We have a long road ahead of us, but together we might just stand a chance. As she turned back toward the map, Daniel felt the weight of her words settle over him. His life had just taken an unexpected turn, one that could change everything. He wasn't sure how he would play a role in this fight, but the truth was clear. He had already made a choice. He had chosen to stand by her side. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Daniel was thrust into a world of intrigue, far removed from the quiet life he had led as an explorer. The woman, whose name he had yet to learn, revealed more about her empire. It was vast, stretching across dozens of systems, its people united by a shared vision of peace and progress. But the rogue faction threatened all of that, and their influence was spreading fast. Together, they moved carefully through the underbelly of the planet, meeting with allies and gathering information. Daniel learned quickly that the faction's reach extended further than he had imagined. It wasn't just political, it was personal. The Queen had enemies in every corner, people who were willing to betray everything they stood for in exchange for power. Despite the danger, Daniel felt a strange sense of purpose beginning to take root inside him. He had always prided himself on his independence, but now he was part of something that mattered, something far bigger than himself. He wasn't just a passive observer anymore. He was a player in a game that could shape the galaxy's future. The woman, whose identity was still a mystery to him, led him through the darkest corners of the planet's underground resistance. They met with spies, diplomats, and leaders of factions who opposed the rogue group. Each meeting revealed more about the scope of the threat they faced. It wasn't just a few rebels. It was a coordinated effort to seize control of the Empire. Daniel felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer just a wanderer in the stars. He was caught up in a battle that could change everything. As the days wore on, the tension only increased. The rogue faction was making its move. They were close. Closer than ever before. And soon, Daniel knew, the true battle for the future of the galaxy would begin. The tension had reached its peak. Daniel stood at the edge of a balcony overlooking the city, his mind racing. The Queen, whose true identity still stirred a mixture of awe and disbelief within him, had given him a task that was both terrifying and crucial. The rogue faction was no longer a shadowy threat lurking in the distance. They were here, on the verge of striking. And now he was part of the effort to stop them. The once vibrant streets of the city below now felt heavy, as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. The calm serenity of the morning had long since passed, replaced by a nervous energy that seemed to pulse through the air. People hurried through the streets, avoiding unnecessary conversations, and the usual sound of bustling markets was muted. It was as if everyone knew something was coming but didn't know when or how it would arrive. Daniel had learned a lot over the past few days. He had come to understand the scope of the conflict. The rogue faction, composed of high-ranking military officers and influential political figures, had managed to infiltrate the most powerful sectors of the Empire. Their leader, a shadowy figure known only as Varric, was a force to be reckoned with. His power was not just in his military might, but in his ability to manipulate the people around him. He was a master of propaganda and deception, able to turn entire populations against their own rulers. Daniel had watched as the Queen met with her advisors in private, her face calm but her eyes filled with an intensity he had never seen before. She was the Queen, the one who had the final say, but even she seemed unsure about how to handle the growing threat. Every decision she made carried the weight of an entire galaxy. And yet, she had placed her trust in him. He couldn't afford to fail her. "Are you ready?" a voice asked from behind him. Daniel turned to see the Queen standing in the doorway, her presence as commanding as ever. She was dressed in simple clothes now, no longer in the regal attire he had seen her wear during their first encounter. She had discarded the elaborate layers of her position, opting for something more practical, something that reflected the urgency of the situation.
"I don't know if I'll ever be ready for this," Daniel replied honestly, his voice laced with uncertainty. "But I'm with you." "You've put your trust in me, and I won't back down." She gave him a small smile, the kind of smile that spoke of years of experience, the kind that hinted at the depth of her wisdom. It wasn't the smile of someone who expected victory without sacrifice, but the smile of someone who knew that the journey ahead would demand everything from them. "I'm glad to hear that," she said, stepping closer, "because we're about to move forward with a plan that will either stop Varric or cost us everything." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. Everything had led to this point. The Queen's plan was bold, but it required more than just political maneuvering. It would require action, swift and decisive action. The first part of the plan was to neutralize Varric's influence in the heart of the Empire by cutting off his support within the military. The Queen had assembled a small group of trusted allies, including high-ranking military officers who were loyal to her cause. Together they had mapped out a way to strike at the very core of Varric's network, hoping to dismantle it before it could spread any further. But this wasn't going to be easy. Varric's forces were well organized and well armed, and they knew how to fight dirty. Every move they made had to be calculated, precise. They couldn't afford mistakes. Daniel was tasked with a critical mission. He was to lead a small team into one of Varric's strongholds, a facility hidden deep within the mountains. It was rumored to be the base of operations for some of Varric's most trusted allies, a place where plans were made and deals were struck. The plan was simple: infiltrate the base, gather intelligence on Varric's next move, and,
if possible, disrupt their operations from within. It was a dangerous mission, and Daniel knew it, but he couldn't back out now. He had made a choice to stand by her side, and that meant seeing this through, no matter what. As they gathered their equipment, the Queen turned to him one last time, her gaze intense. "Remember, Daniel," she said, her voice firm yet calm. "We're not just fighting for the throne. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy. The people you meet, the decisions you make, they will determine what kind of galaxy we live in."
Don't forget that.
He nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The future was uncertain, but it was in their hands. They had a chance to make a difference, to change the course of history. The journey to the mountains was long, the terrain harsh and unforgiving. Daniel and his team traveled in silence, the weight of their mission hanging over them. The closer they got to the facility, the more nervous he became. He had trained for many things in his life, but nothing had prepared him for this. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a hero, but he was here now, and there was no turning back. They reached the outskirts of the facility just as the sun began to set. The base was heavily guarded, surrounded by high walls and advanced security systems. But Daniel and his team had planned for this. They moved quickly and quietly, avoiding detection as they made their way closer to the entrance. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The corridors were dimly lit, and the air was thick with the scent of metal and machinery. They moved through the facility, using the shadows to their advantage, carefully making their way to the central command room. They knew that the heart of Varek's operations was located there, and that was where they would find the information they needed. As they approached the command room, Daniel felt a knot form in his stomach. They were getting closer. The plan was working, but only if they could get in without being caught. Suddenly, they were stopped by a group of guards, their weapons raised. The situation escalated quickly, and within moments, gunfire echoed through the halls. Daniel's heart raced as he ducked behind cover, his mind scrambling to think of a way out of this. His team was outnumbered, but they couldn't afford to retreat. They had to keep moving forward. In the heat of the moment, Daniel felt a surge of adrenaline. He knew what he had to do. He couldn't let fear stop him now. With a deep breath, he stood up, his blaster raised, and fired. The guards scattered, taking cover behind pillars and machinery. Daniel and his team moved quickly, clearing the room, and soon they were inside the command center. The door slammed shut behind them, locking them in. They had made it. The central hub of Varek's operations lay before them. Daniel felt a rush of triumph, but it was short-lived. They still had to complete their mission. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. This is for the future of the galaxy. He stepped forward, determined to do whatever it took to protect it. As they gathered the data they needed and prepared to leave, Daniel realized something important. It wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about personal glory. It was about standing up for what was right, about choosing to fight for a future worth living, no matter the cost. They made their way out of the facility, their mission successful but far from over. They had struck a blow against Varek's empire, but there was still much to be done. As they regrouped with the Queen's forces and made their way back to the safety of the city, Daniel felt a sense of resolve settle within him. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of something much larger, something that could change the galaxy forever. The battle was far from over, but they had made their first step toward victory.